The following podcast is brought to you by the Johners Podcasting Network, found exclusively at WrestlingWithJohners.com.
Welcome to episode 2 of Work the Left Side. Hopefully you enjoyed episode 1. If you did and you've come back, thank you. If you haven't watched episode 1 yet, go watch it. It was a great blast with Mark Haskins. On this show, I am talking to RJ Singh, and the guy's awesome. He's just got stories upon stories. He's been in the ring with Gargano, Ospreay, Travis, Kirby, Haskins, Styx, MadMan Manson. He's worked with lots of people, Tatanka, $1 Million Man, John Morrison, and he's got stories to tell you about all of them. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and don't forget to hit subscribe, hit the notify button so you know when new episodes are getting uploaded. And yeah, go follow me on Twitter as well at WorkLeft. So I'll leave it here. Enjoy the show, and I'll see you for episode 3. Cheers. Bye bye. Thank you for joining me on this chat. And yeah, dude, obviously been a fan for years. I obviously saw you down South Side, NGW. Never managed to get all the way down to Progress and stuff, so I never obviously seen it on YouTube, seen them on networks and stuff. But yeah, big fan, dude. And you was just saying before the start recording, what's this marks your 20th year?
Yeah. I actually started. I started training in the top end of 2001. So it was around. I was actually talking to Styx about this the other day, because he posted on his social media about how he entered training about 20 years ago, and I think he was just slightly ahead of me. So I think it was like March of 2001. I did like a 3-day training camp down in Portsmouth for FWA back when FWA was around, and they had a training academy in Portsmouth with a wrestler called Mark Sloan, and he was just running these training camps sort of Friday to Sunday. So I went down there for a weekend and like just learnt all the basics and stuff. And because I was living up in London at the time and I didn't have a car, I said to him, is there any other training schools around? Because I don't think I'm going to be able to make it down to Portsmouth, even though I love the facility and I thought, it'd be really cool. It just wasn't logistical for me to do it. So he said, actually, there's a London school opening up in Finsbury Park, which was awesome because I was living in Southgate in London, which is Southgate to Finsbury Park is just a couple of tube stops away on the Piccadilly line. So so I signed up to the FWA London school, but unfortunately, I always laugh back at this because I was just like, because I was at university at the time. I was doing my teacher training at university, and the training was on Sundays. So the training took place on Sundays in this leisure centre, no ring, just judo mats, crash mat, and the sort of adults class went on a Sunday. And I used to work on a Sunday, and obviously, I don't know what it's like to work in a supermarket on a Sunday now, but they were like double time on a Sunday or time and a half. And I was a university student, so that was kind of money I relied on. So I was like, I really can't do a Sunday. Like, what other options do you have? And they're like, well, you could do the kids class on the Saturday. And I was like, you what? They're like, well, we run like a juniors class on a Saturday for a couple of hours. But he goes, I'll tell you what, there's a couple of guys from the Sunday class who want to do extra hours, so I'll ask a couple of them to come down so you got someone to work with. So yeah, so for like a month, 2 months, I was like doing the Saturday session with like Styx was one of those guys. Styx was one of the guys at the training school, so he that's how we met each other. So yeah, and like I was fortunate enough to like have him and a couple of other guys I used to work with. And then eventually I stopped working, took out a bigger student loan, so I didn't have to work. And so in the end, I was able to go to the Sunday class, which was cool, and then that's kind of led me on there.
That's awesome. I was going to mention Sticks at some point because obviously I know it was a big factor. You two are really tight. I've sort of, when I've been doing my research, looking through it, you always kind of intertwined. I know you had like a career versus career match back in 2016, and obviously following you on social and stuff. I just know you two are tight, and you've kind of got that friendship. So I presumed it was. I'm sure I've read it somewhere before where you mentioned about it being like at the start of your career, you came into it very close together. Although it does say on one of the wiki pages that you were trained by Alex Shane.
Yeah, I was. I said I had initial training with Mark Sloan, just those 3 days, and obviously then Alex, because Alex and Mark kind of had a partnership in running FWA. So Alex was running a lot of sort of Mark sort of ended up running a lot of the Portsmouth shows. So all the things that were happening in Portsmouth, Mark kind of took care of all of that. And Alex was kind of running all the other shows sort of in London and beyond, and the shows that went up north and things like that. So Alex opened the school in London because he came from Finsbury Park. So he grew up there, so that's why he ran the school out of Finsbury Park, and then I can't remember where it moved to after that. So I was trained by Alex, and like it was Alex who kind of brought me into FWA, and that's kind of where I cut my teeth in the FWA and stuff like that. And so and Sticks as well. So that's where Sticks. Both of us were trained there at that London school. So I'm just trying to think. I think now from that London class, I think it's only me and Sticks who are still in wrestling. There was another guy called Dane who went on to become like the Duke of Danger. He was a pretty big character in FWA. And another guy called Hayde Vanson, who people who followed FWA remember Hayde Vanson. Who, again, he was quite a big star in FWA. He got, one of the sort of guys signed to WWE in the sort of early mid 2000s, and sort of he's one who did that promo on did this one promo on SmackDown and then got released. Yeah.
That's his one moment.
He's an actor now, so like he got into photography and acting and stuff like that. So I think he was in the Mummy, the Tom Cruise version of the Mummy. Yeah. Like he's in that as like a soldier. And like if you watch the trailer, you see Hayde like in one of the opening shots of like his soldiers. He wanted to do some pretty cool stuff.
Well, it's definitely something that kind of transcends into the other thing. I was gonna, you've obviously feuded with Greg Burridge a few times, and he's pretty much key for. He does a lot of film work now, doesn't he? Obviously, a lot of fans, myself included. Again, very limited to seeing a lot of the guys who work down south. I used to go to Doncaster back in the day, 1PW. I just remember him as being the Slag, Greg Burridge, him and Colt Cabana in Team Slag. So, but yeah, Burridge is another one of those guys that just was very, very cool. But he seems to have gone off now into more films than wrestling.
Yeah. I mean, Greg, me and Greg started around the same time. And we both for a time attended a different training school. So the FWA London training school, Alex School, kind of ran from like April to November, and then it closed after that. So we kind of didn't really have anywhere to go for a little while. And then a training school in Essex, in Thurrock in Essex, opened up called Dropkicks. So we ended up going there to Dropkicks, and that's where I met like Greg Burridge and Shah Samuels and Terry Fraser. That's where I kind of met those guys there. We met at that training school because all of us who were at sort of the FWA London school, we kind of migrated over to Dropkicks Wrestling Academy and stuff. That's where I met Greg, and I've known Greg because I think we've known each other since we both started wrestling. And he like really put up a name in 1PW, didn't he? He was like one of the one of the main guys in 1PW.
Main guys there. He's definitely like a hero. He's always got like a massive pop when he came out. Probably just for the excessive use of the word slag, if anything.
Yeah. I mean, Greg was always a really creative guy, so it's no surprise that he kind of ended up in film, and he started off doing a lot of like stunt coordinating, and he actually went to like India and has worked as a stunt coordinator for films in India.
Wow,
which was really amazing. Yeah, so he's gone out and choreographed fight scenes in action movies in India, which was awesome. And then obviously he's kept up an acting profile, and he's directed a couple of his own films and stuff. I think one of them's on Amazon Prime now as well.
I remember seeing that. Yeah, because I've gone Prime and just put wrestling in and see what comes up. And I'm pretty certain there was a big bullish things that popped up. So yeah, fair play to the guy. He's like he always looks the part as well. You always just tell that he was passionate about it. You know, he was always in good shape. He kind of like he looked really dedicated to whatever he was set his mind to. So yeah, the dude's no surprise he's smashing it, to be fair. But yeah, dude, I mean, like I said, I put it on Twitter earlier. The amount of people you've worked with over the years is more, and that says a lot for you, because obviously, you know, you don't put somebody who's not great at what they do against these guys. So it's like, you know, especially like the international guys, like when Gargano's, I mentioned on there earlier. So when he's coming over here, you know, the promotion's looking for the guy that they want to put against him. It's you. So it will big you up a little bit, you know. But what's it like working with those guys as well? You know, these coming over here, you know, they've obviously got a name for himself. Do you just go in there and just show them who's boss? Do you soak up their knowledge? Do you pass on your knowledge? Is it just fun?
I think I've been really lucky, like for the majority of independent wrestlers from overseas. I think I've been quite lucky at the ones I have managed to work with. You know, I worked. I think one of my first ones I worked with Colt Cabana, and we did a really tiny show in like Scunthorpe or something. And it was in a nightclub, but during the day, obviously, rather than, you know, be cool and have a show at night. It was like someone had rented this nightclub out, but in the daytime. And there was about, there must have been about 10 people at that show. 10 people attended, and we were backstage. And I just remember Colt Cabana turning to me, and he was like, "Look, I'm guessing you kind of want to do like some crazy indie stuff." And, you know, I just went, "No, let me stop you right there." I was like, "Dude, there's 10 people out there." I was like, "Tell me the start, tell me the middle, tell me the end, and then we'll just fill in the blanks out there." So, and we just went out and had a bit of fun, really, and, you know, and had a bit of a laugh, you know, and because, you know, and you will get some wrestlers who are like, "Oh, I don't care if there's like 20 or 20,000. I'm still going to put on a great show." And I was like, "Oh, you know, there's a difference. there's a difference between 20 and 20,000. It's
a nice mentality to have, but it's like, do you really want to do that to your body for the sake?
Exactly. It's like, and it's not like, you know, we're not going to go out there and not entertain, but, you know, I'm not actually going to, you know, murder ourselves for, you know, that occasion. So, so we just went out and had a good time, you know,
and not kill yourself. Yeah. You know, you're not going to do those crazy bumps. You're not going to do this. You're still going to entertain them. You're still going to put on a good match, but you're going to put on a safe match.
Exactly. And I remember the match with Gargano was a 6-man tag match down in Portsmouth. It was Rev Pro on one of their holiday camps that they run, and I think Haskins was in that match. I think Zack Sabre was in that match as well. And you know, it was one of the shows where like we'd all done singles matches, and they were like, right, for the main event we'll do a 6-man tag match, and etc. And it was really good chatting to Gargano backstage, and just, you know, having a chat with him about stuff. And I can't just remember what our bit was. I can't remember much of our bit in the match. I remember I ate a super kick. I remember that bit very clearly. And I was like, yeah, come in, bam, super kick. And we were like, yeah, cool, right. And that was it. That was it. So yeah, that was really awesome. Probably one of my favourite was working Tatanka in Southside. That was really cool. That was kind of like, you know, boyhood dreams, it were, is like meeting and working with someone who you saw as a kid, like growing up watching WWF in the early 90s. So to like meet Tatanka and then work with him, and he was so cool, like just so cool, you know, and he was totally just wanted to do really back and forth. Like, was, you know, you do get some guys who will come in and they'll be like, we're going to do this, and this, and you're like, oh, okay, sure. And a lot of the time when someone's more experienced than you kind of feel like you have to say yes to it and whatnot. But he was really cool. He like said, look, I'm going to tell you what I usually do, and like you tell me some bits you want to do and stuff like that. So I was really excited, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. And I was chatting to Paul Malin, another wrestler, Paul Malin, who'd wrestled him the night before. So I think Paul had wrestled him on the Saturday, and I was wrestling Tatanka on the Sunday. And so I was chatting to him, and I said, like, oh, you know, you had to go, and Paul's like, oh, it was great. I had a great time. You know, just the chops are heavy though. And I was like, okay, right. And like you meet Tatanka And we're talking about American wrestlers are just built differently from us. Like everything about them is just larger. Like genetically, Americans just seem to be bigger than us for some reason. So Tatanka's got really massive hands, and so he describes the match to me, and we're talking through it, and he's like, "Yeah, we're going to do this, and he's saying, I'm going to chop you," and I'm like, "Oh, it's cool," and like, so I'm sitting there calculating, and I'm like, "Okay, he's so far." He said he's going to chop me 3 times. I'm like, "That's cool." I can, and I'm not a massive fan of chops, and I'll talk about another one in a minute. But I'm not a massive fan of chops, and I was like, 3, I can eat 3 chops. That's fine, that's cool. Let's do that. So of course he backs me in a corner, and backs me in a corner, gives me the chop. Boom. I'm like, cool. There's number 1. Some guy in the crowd was like, "Give him another," and I was like, "Oh man." Boom! Here comes number 2. I'm like, I was like, "Oh no, I hadn't accounted for this many." Yeah, and then it's like, "One more." Chuck crowd like, "One more time." I'm just like, "You motherfucker," like, so, boom! Here comes another one. But you know what? He didn't get excessive or anything like that. He didn't get excessive. He just gave, and then like I had the 3 that was talked about, and so that was fine. And he was brilliant. He just he came backstage, was really complimentary. He said he really enjoyed it. We had a good chat about things at the time. So yeah, that was one of my real highlights.
That's awesome. So, because you always hear these nightmare stories about don't meet your heroes, or you don't meet X, Y, and Z because you're just going to be disappointed. But sounds of it, man, that's just like, yeah,
that was brilliant. I mean, I was really lucky then to work in 4FW. I worked with Ted DiBiase, and not a match. It was in the 2015 period where I wasn't wrestling. After I'd kind of done that retirement in 2014, or my we were on a break period. And so I wasn't wrestling, but I was managing. I was doing some managing in 4FW, managing a wrestler called Tiger Ali, and he was wrestling John Morrison, who is a beautiful man, by the way. Like, I can't tell you, like, never been starstruck by wrestlers. But I met John Morrison, and he's such a handsome man. I'm like, the only time I've been starstruck, and not because he's a wrestler, just because he's a really beautiful human being. But anyway, so the promoter was like, "Oh yeah, I want just do this bit at the end, and Ted DiBiase will come out, and we'll do this thing, and then he'll put you in the $1 Million Dream." And so there's just this wonderful photo which that was taken by Ollie Sandler, and it's me taking the $1 Million Dream from Ted DiBiase, and it was the only photo I text to all my school friends who remembered. Like, I was like, guys, like my best friend who from school, I was like, and he had like the action figure of Ted DiBiase, and I was just like, "Mate, do you remember Ted DiBiase?" He was like, "Yeah, he's $1 Million." I was like, "Check this picture out. This is me getting the $1 Million." So that was awesome. That was but yeah, that was just also a funny story because Ted DiBiase, obviously we worked it out backstage. He said, "Yeah, I'll just come. I'll pull you out the ring, and then I'll slap on the $1 Million Dream." I was like, "Yeah, cool, awesome." Pulls me out the ring, turns me around, chops me. With his Hall of Fame ring on as well, so he's got a great big Hall of Fame ring, and he chops me. I was like, wasn't expecting the chop. Puts me in the $1 Million Dream. I lay there and it's really again. I've got the second photo I've got the first photo of $1 Million Man giving me the $1 Million Dream, and the second picture I have is $1 Million Man and John Morrison stood in the ring, and I'm flat out on the floor, except I'm all like bent and like when Peter Griffin falls over in Family Guy. And he goes, one arm goes here and a leg goes here. It's that's what I look like. It's a really cool shot. So it's me just, you could draw a chalk line around me on the floor.
Oh, that's awesome.
Cool. So, and there's I'm not going to say because I feel it's not fair to because and I did work another American wrestler though, who just chopped me to pieces, just chest looked like a lump of just like a bloody lump. But again, he was really cool. And we talked through the match. I knew he was a chopper. He's a guy he's known for chops, and
right.
Yeah, I just didn't think he was gonna. He literally just bloodied me raw. So not
appreciation, or was it just because that's how he works?
That's just how he works. It wasn't anything vicious or anything like that. He just works like that, and just I I'm like, So that wasn't fun, which is a shame because I was quite looking forward to that match, and I was like, you know, I don't think it was the best match I could have had with him, and I think I probably could have done stuff better. But kind of when your chest is swollen, and you know, and I think, especially as I've got older now. I mean, I turned 40 this year, and you know, I'm a dad now and stuff like that, and you know, I don't think I'd let that kind of thing go on now than I would then. You know, especially like these days. Like, I mean, not at the moment because of the pandemic we're living in, but like I take my daughter swimming on a Sunday. So if I wrestle on a Saturday night, I can't go swimming like to a, you know, swim group like looking like a right state. So I think, you know, and I think as you get older, there's things you kind of don't accept anymore. You kind of go, this is ridiculous, you know, stuff like that. So
but having the experience behind you and it to be able to say no, you know, you can say no.
Yeah,
So
that's it. I think, and that's kind of the wisdom that comes with experience. And I think, I mean, there'll be some guys some wrestlers probably watch this and think, oh, you know, RJ's such a pussy for not taking chops. And it's like, well, you know, wrestling is wrestling. It is what it is. But at what point I agree, you know, would I ever agree to like someone to, you know, smack me so hard in my chest it bleeds and, you know, is covered in welts and bruises? Like, you know, no thanks. That's right. You can keep that. Right. Yeah, that was right. Yeah.
If you're going to get like chopped off anyone, you want it off Spud. You sure he's got really little hands?
No, his really sting. Really sting. Yeah, it's really like
just like
he'd never do loads, like because obviously I wrestled Spud loads of times, and he'd never excessively chop you. But they really sting. Like he's like a little terrier, that one. So
short person syndrome.
Is that yeah? Horrid little man he is. Horrid little man. So I love him really.
Our friends over at Powered 4 TV are giving listeners to this podcast an incredible 50% off your first month when you sign up to powered4.tv and use the promo code JONNERS. Powered 4 TV are one of the leading on-demand streaming services in the UK, with tons of shows from over 20 wrestling promotions from around the UK and the US, including TNT Extreme, Chicagoland Championship Wrestling, DNA Pro Wrestling, Full Force Wrestling, Ignite Wrestling, and so many more. There's also plenty more to enjoy, including an incredible archive of classic matches, live flyers with William Eva, podcasts, and so much more. Sign up to Powered 4 TV today and save 50% off your first month. Just use the promo code JONNERS.
But yeah, again, it goes back to the PW days. Obviously, he was a name that kind of he was just finding his feet at that point. Just after a lot of guys were just coming up at that point. I think it was just after PW went sort of under. I've classed it. I spoke to Haskins about it. I classed it as like the second coming of British wrestling. And you were finding your feet. You had Styx, you had Haskins, you had Travis, you had Kirby, you had Glugeros. Spud was tearing up down south, Nathan Cruz. You just had guys everywhere that just seemed to be putting on blinders, and I think I definitely just said this in episode 1, but I credit you guys with the where British wrestling is now. I think you got a lot of eyes on the scene because of your matches. You got the fans in. Promotions started just making money due to the quality of the matches, and that obviously put a lot of eyes on the scene. So for what it's worth, yeah, I'll always credit your generation, you guys, as being like the torchbearers for where it is now.
Oh, thank you. That's really kind. And I think you know, I think I was quite proud of that because, you know, when sort of FWA and all that had started up in the early 2000s, you'd had such a long period of like the closing of World of Sport, you know, in the 80s. And then throughout most of the 90s, wrestling was you know, you still had All Star, obviously regularly touring, and you know, Hammerlock bubbling away in the background, but British wrestling was largely, you know, not talked about. It wasn't sort of in the zeitgeist, as it were. It was, you know,
well, those guys pretended to be WWE guys. I can remember British wrestling. It was, you had your fake Undertakers, you had your fake Kanes, you had those guys wrestling at a town hall. You didn't
absolutely.
There would be other people.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of had all that kind of thing going on, and then, you know, and then obviously, like, I will, people, I'm sure other historians of British wrestling might tell you differently, but obviously then like FWA came along in the early 2000s and they really started building up a bit of steam, and they began to model their product on ECW like quite unashamedly. They tell you that as well. So, and obviously ECW just closed in the early 2001, but FWA modeled it, and obviously they used a lot of ex-ECW guys, brought a load of ex-ECW guys, and started bringing over the sort of the next generation of independent stars like Christopher Daniels and AJ Styles, and all those guys came over here in the early 2000s, who were just becoming sort of the top names on the indie scene, and so we had this real rise from like 2002 to about 2005, and we kind of hit its peak, especially sort of around FWA British Uprising 3, which was in Coventry. And then again, we just started filtering off again. Like it started dropping. Like things were being done very differently. Like production values had gone up, and people were, the overall look of the product just looked better. But it wasn't sustainable. The kind of the business models weren't in place to make it sustainable. So we started dropping off again. And then, from 2000, I'd say really about 2007 to 2010, 2011, it was such a dead period. Like, the houses were down as well. We weren't wrestling and there were places like 1PW, which obviously has its own storied history, of what happened there, but things were really downhill. And then it wasn't until sort of around that 2011 period that things started picking up again. And then you saw and obviously ICW had always been around, but it kind of reformatted what it was. Progress appeared, WXW sort of was building up in Germany, and all those kind of companies. And then that's what kind of we had that explosion, really, didn't we, from that point onwards, where things really built up over that period, kind of to where we are now. So, but I think, I always carry a sense of pride in that I was kind of around at that time and sort of keeping things ticking along, as it were.
That's it, definitely. Yeah, you had Southside coming into fruition, obviously NGW, your Progress, loads of companies down south, which I've never got the pleasure of seeing. Your PCW, obviously over in Preston, was starting to make a mark. I just think, a lot of it was just, it boomed again. At the right time, like all the pieces just came together at the right time. And you definitely you're a part of that. So going back, so I've mentioned a couple of people. I've mentioned Martin Kirby as well within that list of people, because Kirby was like an unsung hero. I think he's one of the top guys of that generation. And obviously him and Travis, Project Ego. I know you fought them a few times.
Yeah. I met Kirby. I mean, obviously, I met Trav quite early on in my career. So when I first started, so me and Sticks, we mainly worked for FWA in sort of 2002, and then we were working for Mark Sloan, was running like what he called FW Academy shows. And I'm struggling to remember who hooked us up with some guys in the Midlands. But someone put us in touch with some guys in the Midlands, and all the guys that appeared. So that's how we ended up meeting Spud, and people like that, and Trav, and we ended up going up for it was called UKWA. So they were running a promotion called UKWA, and they joined with another promotion called MBW, and so me and Stick started travelling up to like Nottingham a lot and Sheffield, and and for us that was a really big deal. And that's kind of more where we cut our teeth rather than down south. We kind of cut our teeth on the Midland scene. More than anything. But I met Trav really early on. It must have been 2002, 2003 that I first met. I think it was 2003 actually. I didn't really think much of him when I first met him. just this really sort of tall, skinny kid wearing these, luminous yellow trousers. He had like a brown, I think it was like a brown football shirt that he printed his own shooting star on. He just looked abysmal, but he had such a lot of character for him as well. And he always said to me, like in private conversations, he was such a sweetheart. Like he said to me, like, "Oh, you were my first wrestling hero," because when that first show you came to, like you and Sticks had like proper wrestling gear, and there was us in like dance club wear that we'd bought at a shop in town. And he goes, "Oh, you guys were like my heroes and stuff." So, and honestly, it's probably the highest compliment I've ever been paid by anybody in wrestling. for him to say that. So yeah, we ended up working like at different times in different Midlands promotions. But I'll never forget like the first. It's always the first and the last time we worked together. So the first time we worked together was sometime in 2003, 2004. So this company MBW is run by a guy called Jerry Norton. They said we're going to put on a show called York Fest or something like that, and they described it, and it sounded like a giant marquee tent in the middle of a country park or something like that. I'm sure that was the way it was pitched to us, right? And it wasn't. It was like a town park in Sheffield somewhere, and it was like this gazebo. So we got there, and like, so me and Sticks went up together. They were like, oh yeah, you guys are going to be on like the Saturday, Sunday, whatever. And we went up, and it was pouring with rain, and everyone just looked miserable. Half the people had caught colds because of the weather and sleeping in a tent. There weren't enough tent spaces, so me and Sticks slept in my car that night. And so we were in a tent. We were wrestling in this gazebo, and it's all waterlogged. It's just everyone's gear's covered in mud, and just And obviously we're going 100 miles an hour because we haven't really got a clue what we're doing. We're all like a year in, 2 years in. We haven't got a clue what we're doing. And I'll just never forget. We got to the finish of the match, and I used to do this move. I think Chris Hero used to do it as well. It's like you have him in a reverse DDT position. You lift them up, and then you spin like that. And so you spin, and they come down flat on their face, right? I don't know what happened. Like, I got him up. I just got the angle wrong, and I kind of came down. And as he came down, and he must have come down sideways on his ear, I just heard it go blep like that as he landed. So instead of like up, twist, boom, it was like up, blep, like that. He just like Chris lands on the side of his ear, pinned him, said sorry. And then we all just said sorry. We all just crept off like like that. And then I fast forward to like the last time we wrestled, and it was either early 2014 or late 2013. And obviously we've been doing it for we were a fairly small show up in Peterborough, I think it was, and we worked out a couple of things, and then just before we're about to go out, and he just looks at me and goes, we're going to do a dance off. I'm like, what? He walks through the curtain, and I was like, he's already gone. And I'm like, oh, so we're wrestling. We're wrestling. He rolls out the ring, goes and gets on the microphone, and he's like, right, I'm going to beat you in a dance off. So he dances and whatnot. And I was like, okay, I hit my music, and as soon as I pick up the mic, he's like smiling at me. So I got the mic, turn my back, jumps me from behind. Doesn't even let me dance, and then and that was the last time we worked together, I think it was. But we did a tag match we did a tag match in Southside, both him and Kirby, and I'd wrestled Kirby a couple of times, and I really loved, as you said, Kirby, real unsung hero. I think it's a real tragedy that he retired. Was it last year? Last year? I think he hung up his boots. It was actually just before the pandemic. I think it was. Like, I think it was actually. I learned that Kirby
or something.
Yeah, I think I was on. It was my last show in March 2020 of last year, before the pandemic closed everything. And I finished the show, and I was backstage on Twitter, and I saw his announcement that he'd retired, and he just finished up with Dragon Gate, hadn't he? He'd been out for 6 months with Dragon Gate, so that was a real shocker. But yeah, I did this tag match with against Project Ego, which was great because I'd worked with both guys, really comfortable with both guys. It was Southside in Stevenage, and there's just one bit. Kirby's got me. He takes me into the corner, Project Ego's corner, and he just whispers to Travis, he's like, should we go home now? And for some reason I thought he was talking to me, and I kind of leant up and I was like, yeah, let's go home. And just top of his voice, Kirby goes, I wasn't talking to you. And in front of the entire crowd, like, no context either, for them. Just and it was really fun match. Really good laugh wrestling those two. So both so much, a lot of good memories. And we did a 6-man in progress as well, which was just total shenanigans. The 6-man tag match we had, and again it was just absolute shenanigans. But it was, and the great thing about both those guys, like, oddly enough, in my experience, but for a team who were called Project Ego, they had so little in the way of an ego on them. Like they were just they just wanted to entertain.
Yeah.
That was their core thing, you know. They wanted to entertain and they wanted to be entertaining. They didn't take themselves seriously, but they could both wrestle. They could both work. They, you know, when they needed to work, they could. When they needed to, but they just wanted to be entertaining. And I think that was one of the pure joys of working with them, really.
Yeah, well, I think, like I say, that all of you guys had that about you. You just all worked really well together, no matter whether it was you versus Haskins or Travis versus Lionheart or any guys within that certain area. They just all kind of gelled really well. And again, I think that's just a thing of all the pieces coming together. Whether it's because you all kind of came up, had that little bit of a dip for a few years, but it went quiet, and then it resurged again. Mm-hmm. That you all had that bond. But yeah, for every match that I've ever seen any of you guys in, I don't think, honestly, hand on heart, I don't think I ever saw a bad match with any of the previously mentioned guys in. You, Hayes, Travis, Kirby, Legs, Haskins, Cruz, Sticks, you know, yeah, all those guys. You just
I think a lot of the benefit of that is just being able to work each other so much, and having that kind of experience. I mean, we definitely had bad matches. We just kept them hidden really well. But
there you go.
Yeah, no, that's it. You know, and I think you know, it comes with a lot of trust as well, because you with certain guys, you know certain things you're going to do together, and it makes life easier as well. So, but yeah, it was really, you know, there's a couple of really cool guys in there. I was really glad that I was able to work with for such a long time as well.
Yeah. We mentioned him beforehand before we started recording. I've got to discuss MadMan Manson, because again, going back to the 1PW things, it was another one of those characters. As soon as he came out, he got a pop. He seemed to be one of these guys that you kind of thought was going to go overseas. He kind of had a character about him, and he had a character that he sold 110%. And then, yeah, I saw him in PCW a few times, and then he just kind of, I heard that he went off and obviously to do like bodybuilding and stuff. He was actually in competition.
Yeah, he did. I mean, you know, again, wrestling, MadMan Manson is probably one of the most difficult people I had to work with, just in terms of not laughing the entire time that I was in the ring with him. Like, he would say what he was going to do, and yet his delivery of what he said and what he did was so hard not to corpse in the middle of the ring and to try and keep a straight face the entire time. And I could never do it. I've never got through. You know, of all the times we wrestled, I never got through a match without stifling, like having to go to a corner and just stifle a laugh and just, you know.
He broke Rampage. I saw a match once where he was fighting Rampage Brown, like the most serious dude in wrestling. And yeah, he broke Rampage. Rampage was howling at one point. And literally the whole fans, all of us were just sat there like, oh shit, he's broke Rampage.
Yeah, amazing. It's just amazing, you know, and just good guy. But again, another guy who just, again, no ego, just wanted to entertain. He knew who he was. He knew what his place was on a show. He knew what people wanted from him, and was just excellent at it. Just was brilliant at it. And I think, you know, I think anyone who got a chance to work him came out better for it, because it was so fun. Like, of the handful of times that we worked, it was never a chore. And in fact, there were times where the last couple of times we worked, like, I literally saw the graphic come up and I was just like, you know, big smiley face text messages to him. I'm like, yeah, it's you and me. And again, we got to the point where we didn't really have to talk through much, because we just knew what we were going to do at that point. And I think I think one of the last times we worked was Don't Tell the Bride. That episode of Don't Tell the Bride, the wrestling wedding. I don't know if you ever saw that. Yeah, so we obviously we were at the wedding and we worked the show, because they set up a show to be done as well. So we've worked on that as well with each other, which was hilarious. Although if you watch that episode of Don't Tell the Bride, you see my wife way more times than you see me. Like, I think I'm in about 2 clips, and then my wife's in about like 5 different clips of that episode. So.
Does she remind you of that on a regular basis?
Yeah, she's way more over than me. So, Manson was always a real pleasure. Always such good fun to work with. Always just you knew what you were going to get, and it was just so much fun. Like, I would say I would wrestle him every night for the rest of eternity. If that was my option, I would definitely take that. But yeah, so he just knew when it was his time, and he just said, yeah, I've had fun. But it's now time to do other things. So he did some bodybuilding as well, and got into that. And then, but he's like a chemical engineer, very very smart dude. Does lots with chemicals, very very cleverly and stuff like that. So yeah, really good guy.
That's awesome, man. So you went on to do commentary on Progress. We can actually hear your voice on the WWE network.
That's wild. It's wild. That's really wild, that as well. And I mean that was something I never really intended to kind of happen. So like I said, I kind of had a retirement in 2014, and then I was like, that's it. I'm done. I'm free. I'm away from wrestling. I'm done. I'm totally done. This is cool. And then, as I said, Dave Sharp, who runs 4FW, contacted me and said, "Oh, I know you're not really wrestling anymore, but do you want to come do some manager work for me? Like, you'd be such a great character." And I was like, "Oh, okay, all right, I'll come. I'll just do it." So, go on then. So I kind of get back there, and then Progress contacted me, and they were like, I know you're not really wrestling anymore, but we're rejigging how we're doing commentary. We're not having a one-man commentator anymore. We want to have a commentary team, and we want the commentary team to go live and record live on the show. And we really would like a wrestler who's got the wrestler perspective in there. So you've got that dynamic between, you've got the play-by-play and you've got the color commentator, and we want you to have a go. So, and I was like, oh, go on then, I'll give it a shot. So, and I ended up just really enjoying it. It was a really fun aspect and it was a really different side of the business, which I'd never done before. And a lot of it was kind of on the spot training, because I've never been formally trained in how to be a commentator. So
how did you train for that? Well, because obviously the moves, what the story is. Obviously you go over it with people beforehand. There's certain bits you need to core, certain bits you don't need to. You just do on. Yeah. What is the training to be a commentator?
I mean, I'd say obviously the main sort of form of thing is working out who's going to say what, and knowing those two different roles between the play-by-play and the color commentator, and knowing when to not step on each other's toes and who's going to say what. And obviously around that time, just not long after I got into doing the commentary, obviously Progress made the relationship with NXT UK. So obviously they then received training on the commentary style of WWE and how a WWE would commentate, and then they were able to pass on some of that to us as well. So because me and Callum, who ended up doing a lot of the commentary together, they would just give us hints, and they would say, and so I was always like the color commentator. So I was always, in the first run when it was with Glenn would obviously do a lot of the play-by-play of what was going, and then it would kind of be like turn to me to kind of talk about the move. So it's like, oh, he hit, he's put this hold on, and then I'd be like, yeah, that really affects your spine and your the joints and da 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 da. Yeah, and then when we kind of did it as a 3-man team, where it was me, Glenn, and Callum, and then Callum was kind of the historian as well. So Callum would do callbacks to previous matches and history between wrestlers and stuff like that. So we kind of then developed our flow really, and what was quite beneficial, because we weren't obviously on camera while the matches are happening. We can kind of wave to each other and kind of say so, and there'd be times where Glenn would be like to the two of us to be like, don't say anything, or you just keep quiet for a second, or as Glenn was saying a bit, I'd be raising my hand to say, as soon as your sentence is finished, I'm gonna pitch in and say something. So it kind of just became really natural after that, and I think we just kind of found a natural rhythm how to bounce off each other, and we knew what each was going to say. And I think a lot of the time I closed out each segment. So we would record, generally we'd be recording at around bell time. So when the bell hit in a match, it'd be that's when you start talking, so that the commentary will start from the bell. So we kind of learnt to do that. I mean, I dread to think what Progress has in their recorded archives of stuff that we said off camera. I really dread to think. I did say to John Briley, please never release the unedited what we talked about the 3 matches. But but one of my favourite commentary moments was I can't remember what the match was. I remember it had Zach Gibson in it, and Zach Gibson was at that point in Progress where he'd do his soon to be promo, and the crowd would boo and da da da. And he was halfway through his promo, and the babyface whoever drop kicked him and straight, And so obviously the bell's rung. But as he's drop kicked him, and Zach Gibson's such a professional, because I think one of the worst things, and one thing I absolutely hate in wrestling is wrestlers who throw microphones down.
Yeah.
Because microphones are expensive. Like, I'm sure you'll know this. On a show, when you're an independent company, you don't have the money to WWE can trash as many microphones as they want because they've probably got 50 in their truck. But on an independent show, you've got 1, maybe 2 microphones at best. So I hate it on independent shows when wrestlers throw down microphones, or because it makes a horrible sound and it can break the microphone. So as Zach Gibson's taking this kick, he's such a professional. He's still holding the microphone really tightly and safely. And I'm on the commentary desk, so agog and marking out. I'm like, oh my God, he's still got the microphone in his hand. That Glenn is nudging me and going, commentary started. The match has started. We should be talking. So there's me there's me having this fanboy moment when I should actually be talking and talking about the match. So that was, but it was good. It was, it was always really good. I got to see some incredible matches, and I got to see a lot of the guys who are in NXT and NXT UK, up close and personal, watching some of their matches. So I saw a lot of pretty much, I think I commentated on pretty much all of Ciampa and Gargano's run in progress, the runs they had in progress. I think I commentated on pretty much all of that. Riddle, a lot of Riddle's work in progress, I was lucky enough to comment on as well. So that was really cool. And I think the only time commentary went wrong for us, there was one show we did, and I wish I could remember. I've got to try and remember the main event. No, I can't remember what the main event was, but I remember we really poured our heart and soul into it. We were screaming down for the main event. We were screaming down the microphone. We were like, "Oh my God, but so really ran our voices completely hoarse. And then on the Monday evening, I get a message saying, "Yeah, the audio corrupted. The entire audio file is corrupted." And we're like,
Dude.
"Oh no!" And they were like, can you come around Glenn's and we'll just re-record commentary? We'll just, we'll play it on the screen. You can watch it. And it just wasn't the same. I mean, I couldn't tell you what chapter it was, but I know if I watched it back, I would know the difference between live. Because when you obviously live, you're seeing it on the spot. You're reacting as you see it. So to try react the same way the second time round watching it is so difficult. It just didn't quite have the same passion, but we did the best obviously we could, but it wasn't quite the same. But it was it happened. It happened.
It's still forced in it because it's still a great match. You're still watching it, but you're not going to get that vibe that you got the first time round. Genuine sort of oh shit, what's going on? So
you got the crowd energy as well. You got the crowd right there, and the energy from the crowd, and the excitement and the atmosphere, and it's amazing. And then you just don't have that when you're just watching it on the TV back a second time. But there you go. So
it was sort of surprised me when I hear about certain promotions record the commentary afterwards, because I thought you can always tell it's such a different level of standard for people who are commentating on it there and then to just recording it afterwards. It just always kind of amazed me that people would even do the recording afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, I can see how it's done out of necessity. If you don't really have the equipment to do it live and stuff like that, you've got to do it in post production. But nothing will be doing it live, in my opinion. I've recorded commentaries, a couple of commentaries just watching, and it's never the same. You just because you like being in the ring, you just feed off what the crowd are doing, and you feed off that atmosphere. And it kind of hypes you up as well. So it'll never be the same. So it's if anyone has a chance ever to do commentary on wrestling shows, it's a really good experience. You learn a lot, and it's a totally different skill set from being in the ring. But it's one that I really enjoyed doing.
Would you go back to it?
Maybe I don't know. I mean, being that I'm heading on to 40 this year, my hip is playing up a little bit these days. I sound like such an old man, and it's when it gets cold. My hip, I know it's cold because my hip plays up. And obviously, but having my daughter now, who's just turned 2.5, and I am properly truly in that winding down phase now. I think just with everything given, just because of my age, and I've had so much time with my daughter over the pandemic. I think I'll find it really hard to give up my weekends to go back and wrestle as much as I was doing, just because I'm used to having so much time with her. And it's obviously, and then you don't realise how much you miss if you're not with them. And I work. I'm at work 5 days a week, and I miss an awful lot just those 5 days a week. So those weekends have become so important to me, especially at that young age.
You just, because I've got a 3-year-old, and just every minute it's just something new every day. And if, like say, you're working 5 days a week, do you want to risk missing out on those days on the weekend?
Definitely. So I think and what with whatever time I've got left, I kind of want to finish it up doing in-ring stuff. And so kind of that's where my priority is. So, but you never know. Like saying wrestling, you never say never.
Right. You've retired twice now, haven't you?
Yeah, mate, about 4 times, I think. I think twice is underselling it. Sorry?
Becoming the British Terry Funk.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, but yeah, no. If the right situation came along and the right deal came along, like to do commentary, I probably wouldn't say no. If I found the right company that I felt comfortable working with and it was the right time, then sure. So I wouldn't rule it out.
If it was close at home as well, it didn't take too. It was only like a couple of hours.
Absolutely. That's it.
So, well, hopefully you do, man, because it's always good to hear you calling the matches as well. But yeah, what you're doing in Progress was awesome, and as I say, it's now on the network. Everyone else to see.
Yeah, I think I still find that really out there. Like it's really funny where like someone's I think it was Callum sent me a screenshot a while ago. And it was, I think it's Tony and Kaylee Ray, and it's just got commentary RJ Singh, and then it's got my caption of whatever I was saying as well. So I think that's it's amazing.
So you need to take a picture of that and send it to your mate who's a massive Dibiase fan and say, look.
Yeah. He wouldn't care about that. I just have to more 80s wrestlers. If I send him more 80s wrestlers though, then it probably would.
Oh, I've got a question. I just totally remembered. Somebody asked me on Facebook earlier to ask if there was a British wrestler in the 80s called Tiger Gill Singh. Worked for like Daddy, obviously the world of sport in the 80s. Any inspiration? Because obviously I know when you've wrestled under a mask as well, you've also used the name Tiger.
The Bengal Tiger, yeah. So yeah,
if it's somebody that was younger, if it's somebody that sort of made an impression, or if it's just pure coincidence.
No, just coincidence, really. I think it's just the name, the sort of Tiger and Singh have gone in hand with quite a few wrestlers over the generations, both here and overseas. So, but yeah, no, I do know the wrestler he's referring to as well, and I've watched a couple of his matches, World of Sport matches, where he had a bit of prominence, sort of over the 80s or so. But no, I remember when I kind of, because I didn't always start out doing like the Bollywood gimmick. That came kind of much later on, sort of say in the late 2000s. I kind of came up with that. So, and I just wanted something that was a bit more sort of authentic sounding, because I'd started doing this character. Because when I first started wrestling, I used the ring name Ross Jordan, and I then started becoming like the Bombay Dream, because this was before Bombay was handed back and became Mumbai. It's because me and my wife, I think it was our first Valentine's together, we'd gone to see Bombay Dreams, which was a musical. It didn't run for very long. It was like a Bollywood, but it was like a West End musical, and it was called Bombay Dreams. And I just really, when I watched it, I was like, I really like that. I really like that kind of, and even like the logo I borrowed. I kind of had my own version of the logo on my gear, and so I started calling myself the Bombay Dream, but I was like the Bombay Dream Ross Jordan, and I was like, it still doesn't quite work. And then when I did the gimmick up in XWA, which was kind of an extension of FWA up north in Morecambe, Greg Lambert, who was the promoter, he said, I think the Bollywood Dream, especially when Bombay, around that period, Bombay had become Mumbai again. And I was like, well, that doesn't work anymore, so I can't really use that. And he was like, what about the Bollywood Dream? And I was like, oh yeah, let's name it Bollywood Dream. But then I was like, the Bollywood Dream, Ross Jordan doesn't really work. So I just wanted something a bit more authentic sounding. Like, if you're going to do like a Bollywood gimmick, you need, a better. So I just, Singh being a very common, obviously, Indian surname is what I went with. And obviously I kept the RJ because of Ross Jordan and my real name as well. So I just thought, yeah, I'll just go. And that's kind of how I ended up using the name. So
nice. Just touched on the Bengal Tiger thing. What was it like under a mask, man? It must have. Did you like it? Did you only ever do it as a last resort? Was it just like it must have been. Did it just kind of throw you off? Did you get used to it eventually?
Yeah, I got used to it. It was hideous at first. Like when I was working for Lucha Britannia. and which you know, a company down here which at the time they weren't really a wrestling show. They were kind of a cabaret act, which happened to have wrestling within it. So they had lots of different things like sword swallowers and fire breathers and cabaret and burlesque, and then wrestling as well. So it was kind of this really sort of fun evening package. And we'd often be hired by like corporations to go do corporate gigs, which was really cool. So like the first couple of times I worked for Lucha Britannia, it wasn't even like a wrestling show. It was an entertainment evening for like the launch of like Doritos new brand of crisps. So and like the whole gimmick was like the different flavors wrestling each other. So like a couple of the guys on the show like dressed up as giant peppers and tomatoes and had these big mascot uniforms. But to start the evening, they wanted a couple of us just to wrestle. So me and Paul Robinson, who wrestled as like Leon Britannico, we just did just an opening match just to kind of warm everything up before they started doing all these other crazy characters and stuff like that. But so that was the first time I worked for Lucha Britannia. And obviously they had lots of really colourful characters. You know, it's all based on Lucha Libre, but also very cartoony. So you had all, you know, everyone had like a real gimmick character. So I kind of was like, oh, I've got an idea for a character. It wasn't really much of an idea. It was Tiger Mask. Right? I'm just going to be straight up honest. Right? It was Tiger Mask. It was just, you know. But I was like, yeah, call it the Bengal Tiger and etc. And so the first mask I bought was like a tiger style mask, except it had that mesh over the eyes. Kind of like Lindsay Dorado had it, but you know, you'll notice a lot of, you know, Sin Cara had it, didn't he? He had the mesh over the eyes, and that is really hard to see out of. That is really difficult. Yeah, it's literally like, so I only wrestled in that for a handful of times, and then I cut the mesh out because I was like, I can't see a damn thing in this one. And you do have a slight hearing loss as well, because obviously your ears are covered, so there is a slight loss of hearing. But what I did is when I then got my new mask made, and I got a brand new orange and black mask made for Bengal Tiger, and I based it on a combination of Tiger Mask and Black Tiger. So it kind of had the patterning of Tiger Mask, but it had the fanged mouth of Black Tiger.
Yeah, I remember seeing it.
Great, which is great but that was good because it did have a small hole. But I mean, even then, it's still really hard to breathe because again, you've got something covering your mouth. Most of your nose are covered. You lose your hearing a bit, and you know, I got used to it. But it's great because you can obviously with the teeth and stuff, you could talk a lot, and people can't see your mouth moving because it's behind the mask. Lucha Britannia as well. They run out of a what's called the Resistance Gallery, which is a railway arch in Bethnal Green, and that thing is a sweatbox. And I'm like joking, like particularly in the summer. So like literally, we you know, if you did their shows on a Friday evening in July and August, it's so hot in there. Like, and people who would come to watch the shows on those Friday evenings are like, oh, what do you wear? And I'm like, wear beach wear, like literally put on a pair of swim shorts and a t-shirt because it's that hot in there. And you know, and I just remember it was so hot in there. It was like I finished the match I was doing. I took off the tiger. I think I did like an ear wee wee where just like sweat was just like so disgustingly hot as well. But I really enjoyed it. I mean, working in the mask is great fun. And then you know, I did a couple of times. I did the Bengal Tiger outside of Lucha Britannia. I did it in Southside. I wrestled Martin Kirby when he was doing something dragon.
Ego Dragon, wasn't it? Yeah, it's Ego Dragon.
Yeah, my first match for Kirby, he was Ego Dragon and I was Bengal Tiger. And kids love it. That's the thing, though. The kids just love it. And I actually ended up doing a show in Enfield near where I worked at the time. And a couple of the kids from the school I was working at turned up to the show, but because I was in the mask, they never knew it was me. So they came up and got my autograph and everything, but they didn't have a clue it was me under the mask. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, was you not just tempted to kind of take off and be like?
No, I was like, no, keeping this right.
Be professional.
Yeah.
Did you like? Does it? I can imagine when you got the mask on, you don't quite have the inhibitions because obviously you kind of feel like the face is covered.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it does. It definitely. It does. I think that's one of the things that benefits having the mask. You can totally like immerse yourself in that character, and you know, and if you mess things up, they can't see the pained expression on your face if you've messed things up, you know. So I think that helps as well because I think You know, I think in wrestling, when things go wrong, it's just painted on people's faces more than it is anything else. So I think the mask really helps with that. So it's always, like I said, but yeah, always really great fun. Always really fun doing the Bengal Tiger.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've just clocked the time, and I've had you talking for about an hour, so I'll start to wrap it up because it's a night time. So I appreciate it so much, and well, there's a bit more to go. So I'll have you back on at some point in the future.
Awesome.
Awesome. Yeah,
of course.
So yeah, I'll wrap it up there. Then we'll to be continued. Dude, thank you so much for the stories, mate. It's been absolutely awesome. Massive fan of British wrestling. I kind of want to focus on that as well as obviously the American stuff on the show. So yeah, I'm loving having you guys on at the minute. So as more as I can spotlight it, the better. Yeah, dude, you're an absolute star. Thank you so much.
Real pleasure. Thank you.